Good evening and welcome to the November 16th, 2022 School Committee meeting. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have some guests with us tonight, and I'm going to pass it right over to you, Ms. Prindeville. All right.
So,
Hi. Hi again.
So we are the Wilmingtons. We are a 12-member a cappella group, and we meet about 2 or 3 times a month, and we perform a variety of songs. Right now we're focusing on kind of holiday songs, and also we focused on the Star Spangled Banner, which is what we are going to present to you tonight. Our next gathering, we're going to be working with the Senior Center up because of Vinia, up by the gas station, and we're going to be singing some Christmas carols with them and doing some sing-alongs. But we are going to perform the Star Spangled Banner for you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you so much. All right. You heard this. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for
Thank you
coming.
so much. I know, for sure.
Okay, that was a joke, but I was like super next.
We're super next.
Super next.
Oh my gosh, I'm sitting in the chair. Dear Lord. Okay.
Super next. That was great, thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Great. Lots of, a big noise for a small group, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Yeah, we actually,
Rich.
COVID took a hit on us, especially like with the performing arts department, but last year we had 8 members, so the fact that we're now at 12, like consistent members is really awesome, so.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We, again, continue to try and provide an opportunity, a spotlight for the many great things that are going on throughout our district. And so tonight, this evening, we have a spotlight on our performing arts department.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I run, the 6th through 8th grade chorus as well as the general music, but after school I run the a cappella group, and I also run the 6th through 12th grade theater program after school, which is why I am here. And I am also here with some of my production team members, Kevin Berube and Julian Tom Hall, who have been instrumental in helping me, take the drama club programs to the next level. So we created a little slideshow, and we have our logos all fancy up there for you. I've never used this before, so I'm hoping it's
Right
Right click, yeah.
side. You got it.
great.
There you go.
Excellent. All right. So First up is the WHS Drama Guild Fall 2022 play. So we did Puffs, and which is like sort of based on Harry Potter, and we had about 42 students who participated in the cast and crew. This wasn't a cut program. I know that sometimes there are programs, like theater programs, that can only accept a certain amount of kids, but I'm really focused on trying to find programming for the clubs to make sure that we don't cut kids. So anybody who auditioned was automatically in. Anybody who wanted to be on the crew side was given a spot. And it's also notable for a high school play because sometimes plays typically don't have as big of numbers as a musical would, as you're going to find out in a couple slides. But it is really notable that we had like around 42 students participate. So what we did with Puffs was really kind of, used the resources we had on hand, as well as the technical expertise that wasn't available prior to the season. And we expanded, as you can read from the slideshow, we really did expand the scope of what is possible in a typical high school theater program. I know that some of you were able to see Puffs, and again, thank you so much for coming. And you could tell we added surround sound to the auditorium. We had over 1,000 sound cues, all operated by our student sound kids. And we incorporated different video projection elements, which was, again, it's kind of unheard of for a theater program, especially at a high school level, to be going, this big. We reached out to kids with animation, who had that background, as well as video creation, and just being able to provide a different, different element to theater that you don't typically see. And we were able to involve WCTV, who helped us record using green screen and everything like that. So our Drama Club Fall musical is Elf, and we went from 66, when I took over the drama program back in 2019, 2020, we had 66 kids in the middle school program, and this year we have 119. Yeah. That's about 19% of the school, of the total school. We did the math, because I was like, that's a lot of kids. So again, nearly double the head count from 2019, and we have 58 in the cast. We have 61 crew members, including 35 kids on art, I think about 35, who have made, it's amazing. I hope you can come see it, because they did all the set design, like all the kids, like 8th graders helped sketch everything, and then the 6th, 7th, and the other 8th graders helped like paint everything. It's amazing. And so we wanted to do full productions. Typically with a middle school, we do, there's been junior productions done, which is like a smaller scale, and which is fine, but my thought has always been, we have the talent at the middle school, why not do the full productions? And because of that, the kids have seen, what's possible at a middle school level, and they've taken that, energy that me and my team have created and have taken it to the high school, especially with this past production of Puffs. For the spring, so after ELF, the middle school is taking a hiatus, so I can concentrate on our production at the high school, but we're going to be doing a spring play. Also, what's really cool is that I have about 11 students from the high school who have graciously volunteered their time to come help us out. It does fulfill some community service hours, but they honestly just like love coming back and working with the kids, and it's really just nice to have that familiar face too, so that way when kids are deciding, oh, what do I want to do after after 8th grade, they're like, well, I know I have friends up in the high school, so like I know that I'll be, I'll have that support system there. So I think that was also really important as to why we have high school volunteers. As you can tell, I am a little nervous because I am great speaking in front of kids. I'm like, oh gosh. All right.
Doing great.
So if I'm moving too fast, please let me know. So I alluded to, so our spring musical for the high school, I guess it's winter spring, is School of Rock. And it's going to be March 23rd, 24th, and 25th. And we're going to, what's also really cool about this is we're outreaching to kids who wouldn't normally think about doing drama, but because there's an element of like instruments, I was able to talk with the band students, and I have some kids who are in band thinking about like auditioning or participating in the actual like instrumentation. So we anticipate that we'll have about 40 to 50 students that will be involved with the production, hopefully more, but you know, I know winter's a busy time, and I was able to make it work with sports schedules for kids who wanted to do, you know, the fall play, but also wanted to do, you know, soccer, and I was able to make it work, so I'm hoping that I can make that work as well with the winter sports. We're also going to include a very limited number of 7th and 8th grade middle school students, again, kind of, you know, working on bridging the gap between the programs and really kind of, you know, enticing, I guess, the kids to stay, you know, at, you know, in the Wilmington Public Schools. So hoping this will also give, like, again, a chance for the middle school students, you know, select a few of them to work with the high schoolers. The last slide I'm going to present to you, but I do have, I'm not sure where you, do you have copies of the slide?
We do,
okay.
yeah.
Cool. So before I dive into the last slide, I do want to say that we did reach out to some of our alumni from the middle school and the high school programs just to give some to give some feedback on what their time with the middle school and high school theater programs has meant to them and like how much it's helped them. We had one kid who's now a theater education major at Emerson College, you know, respond back. We've had parents, we've had kids talk about what being part of the theater program has meant to them. So I just wanted to make sure that if you have a chance to please read it. So the production team vision. So I call ourselves the dream team because our philosophy is go big or go home. It was even on the back of our crew t-shirts last year for Beauty and the Beast. But the reason why we kind of picked that theme is because we don't think that there should be a limit to what we should do at a theater program, especially in, you know, a district as great as Wilmington. We accept everyone in our program, like regardless of level and skill. Like you do not have to have any sort of background in order to participate. Like you could just literally walk on stage being like, I've never acted in a show, and I'll be like, great, you're in. You don't have to have the, you know, sometimes like the years of experience that you might have with, you know, with a sport or, you know, with, you know, any other sort of club. And nobody's left on the bench. Everybody has a role if they want one. We create a safe space. Everybody is accepted and valued exactly for who they are, what they bring to the table, and we utilize all of their skills. So with professionals at the helm, we provide educational opportunities that literally cannot be provided by volunteers alone. My prod team, like individually, we put in at least 350 hours into puffs on our own. And they're amazing, and I'm so grateful that I have people who believe in the theater program for Wilmington Public Schools as much as I do. And they also just have so much to offer, you know, STEM backgrounds, you know, community theater, like children's theater, professional theater backgrounds. You know, this is the type of stuff that the kid, you know, not all school districts are as lucky as we are to have people like who live here. Like 3 of my members of my team are like, they live in Wilmington. And the fact that we have this talent, you know, is just fantastic. And like, I couldn't do it without them. our team is committed to the long-term success of the program. Like, we've already been talking about what we want to do in 2026. We have so many ideas, and we have so many things that we want to do, with the kids in order to give them a program to really be proud of. And we're in it for the long haul. I know there's been a little bit of turnover at the high school, and there just hasn't been much consistency, but I've been teaching in Wilmington since 2016, but I've also been working in some sort of realm with the theater program here since 2011. And we're really here to make sure that the kids have the best experience, and also with that, the continuity of, adults they can trust at the helm. What we're really wanting to do, and as I alluded to this in previous slides, is really bring the middle school drama students to the high school program. We have students who have told us they chose Wilmington High School over Shawsheen because of the drama program. Not just the drama program, but because of how strong our performing arts department is. The tech, I don't know if you know, but I guess the Shawsheen Tech now has their own drama program. And ours needs to be good, even better than what they are offering in order for us to keep kids here. And so we just really want to make sure that we're at a level playing field. And when the kids have their choice between, Wilmington High School or a prep school or any of the techs. And lastly, our program is not just putting on a show. We teach the kids, we teach the kids so many different facets of not only putting on a show, but being a good citizen and being a good, a productive member of society. We do a lot of social emotional discussions, and we have check-ins, and we really work hard to make sure that the kids feel like they have a voice, but they also understand that we're here for them, and that that this is a really great opportunity for them to learn from experts, and also to just get really good life experience. And we have an exceptional program here, but we just want to make it even better. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
MJ.
So I have to say, my son is taking, and I'm not going to say it right, it's about inspiring, and it's about creativity, personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, back in the last century, I was in my own drama. Granted, I was behind the scenes because I believe it or not, didn't like crowds, to be in front of crowds. But it truly is something to get into theatrical productions and set building, and there is a complete science behind a theatrical production, whether it's from the lights, whether it's from set design. There's a huge another level of creativity, and especially with regards to preparation it takes to get into these roles and to hone the character, which whether it be the smallest bush,
Yes.
It's really you touched upon social emotional aspects, but discovering oneself and one's ability creatively is a huge foundation to branch off to the next step after Wilmington Public Schools. And it plays such a vital role in our students' well-being and educational challenges that they themselves take on for themselves. That confidence.
Yes.
So, and I thank you very much for your dedication
Oh, thank you.
to that, because I'm a big performing arts, so I
Yeah.
imagine that.
I know, but we need everybody, cast and crew, otherwise we don't have a show. So I appreciate that.
Of course.
Other questions or comments? Mrs. Plowman?
I just want to say thank you to you and your team. I think you emulate safe and supportive schools. I'm emotional about this. So thank you. Beyond just I think the way you make children feel, clearly you make me feel that way too, but I think you're listening to what the district goals are around bridging middle school, high school, supporting our middle school kids. Clearly, we're seeing the results of amazing programming. So my daughter is benefiting from that. That's why I'm so emotional. But so thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. It's always, so like personal moment here, but it's always been a dream of mine to run a secondary, like, you know, choral and like theater program, and like the fact that I get to like do that in a district that I've been, you know, again, working in for 11 years, like has just been so fulfilling, and it, you know, it makes me emotional, but it makes me really happy when I get to see, you know, the kids that, you know, I started with when they were in 6th grade. Now I get to work with them in 9th grade. It's just like, there's like literally no better feeling. So I appreciate that.
Mr. Turner?
So as a parent, being in a school district, from the time the kids were young and the music, the way the art and music program started, and then particularly from the 4th grade on with band and chorus and strings, it's fantastic, and it's such an important part of any balanced educational system, is having the arts in there and having it be a consistent part. It's not something we just drop in for a few years in 2nd grade and 6th grade and we're done. It's a part of the program the whole way through. But then last spring when we had the trip to Palmer, where we had the judges adjudicating the band, the strings, and the chorus, and they were blown away by the number of children involved and the quality. And they said, and part of it was coming out of COVID. It's a credit to the teachers and the passion they had through COVID that we had a program that was in the position it was in at that point in time. So that was, as a parent, seeing, it was a very, very proud moment for the schools of what a great job the teachers and children are doing. And then as a parent, obviously I'm super invested in the theater program because my child happens to be, one of my children happens to be in, and so I very much enjoyed that. But it's fantastic what you guys are doing, all of you are doing.
So much, thank you. I've been really lucky. My chorus has doubled in numbers just from this, like from 2021, I can't count, 2021 to 2022, I think we said 109%, something like that, between like at least the 6th and 7th grade. So yeah, I'm very proud to, you know, but it's also like a testament to like the families that like are encouraging the kids to stick with the arts too. So I appreciate that.
Can I go? I'm gonna go. Your commitment.
Can I jump in?
I was gonna go first, but you can go. This is the joy of being the chair. I'm just like, you go.
So I want to say thank you to everyone here at the table, and not just in criminal, but also to Peruvian, to Julie and Tom Hall for the just uncounted hours of work that have gone into the production so far, jumping all the way back to last spring, and it will be continuing going forward this year, because it is, you know, a production is an extremely complex thing, and the amount of time and the amount of dedication that it takes is really just staggering. So thank you so much for just all the work and love and effort that you're putting into this. Hearing this presentation and just seeing the direction that the theater program has been going, I'm not sure if sort of my heart is swelling more with joy or with pride. It's some big combination of that. Wilmington has always had good performing arts, but I think especially what's been happening in the theater program is just taking it to the next level. And coming from a background myself of having, you know, both been on the crew and performed in middle school, high school, and college, and even in law school, the love of performing in a theater that you can inculcate in these kids is just a gift that they will have for the rest of their lives. And it goes far beyond just the experience that they're having now. But you know, to be part of a show, whether you're performing or creating the art, so building the sets or making the props, to rehearse the show, to perform it in front of an audience, and just see the results come together is a teamwork experience that is absolutely unforgettable. And so when I think about what's already been accomplished and what these kids have to look forward to in the next few years, I am just so deeply, deeply grateful.
Thank you for your really kind words.
He said it so much better than
I'm like, how am I supposed to follow? Well, I'll just say, so I won't, other than I've always so enjoyed all of the performances my children have benefited from, band and strings and theater. But watching you talk about it is really beautiful. And we are so blessed to have so many wonderful people working on it, but to know like the joy that you feel when you talk about this, I'm sitting here like, I was very emotional. I was like, this is very, because it's so authentic. And there's just, you can clearly are so committed and dedicated to this work, to moving us forward, and to the children. You just clearly love this work. And for that, we're so deeply grateful. Just sitting, I remember watching Beauty and the Beast last year. We were sitting in the same row, and I was looking around and going, oh my gosh, like, this is unbelievable. It was really, I mean, it's always, I think the theater, everything's always been so well done, but I remember looking around going, this is unbelievable. So congrats to all of you and for your work and for bringing us to a level that feels like I went to a performing arts high school, and I feel like we're like that. And that's very exciting to go to shows and feel like it is really top notch. So thank you and congratulations. And we can't wait to see all these shows. We're so thrilled.
Yes, ELF is on deck. We just had our last official rehearsal today, and then we start our, what we call a cue to cue, basically where we now incorporate all the lights and sound and like set pieces and everything, and then we start everything after Thanksgiving.
That's great.
Yeah.
It must be
Man.
exhausting, huh?
I'm excited, exhausted.
It's like adrenaline, and then it's like,
Yep.
yeah.
That's pretty much what I'm running on. But I am making sure to get like at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Like,
Oh, good. We're happy to hear that. Jesse.
I just wanted to really, I can't say it better than anybody else did, but really quickly, 20% of the middle school population is involved. Like, I mean, that's amazing. So everything else, certainly, credit to you guys and the team. That's, I mean, that's huge, especially in that age range where
like
you don't want to
you don't want to stand out.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
you don't want to stand out. And
Right.
like, these kids are like, nope, let me at it.
Honestly, I think it's a testament to what you guys are building there. So that's great.
It was funny because like the first drama club meeting, I was like, oh, maybe we'll get like, 60 kids, but me and some of the team were there, and they just kept coming in and just kept coming in. We're like, oh no, I think we need a bigger stage. We're still thinking that, but
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. Just the support is really inspiring. So please continue sharing everything with us and letting us know what we can do to support this great work.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I always say you're more than welcome to stay, but
I think I have one thing on the
Oh, you do?
agenda.
Yes.
It's the approval for the field.
Yeah.
So speaking of trying to bridge the gap,
So you can actually, you want to just stay right there, because I'm going to run through the
Yeah, sure.
approval of items by consensus, and you'll be right up if you want to talk quickly about that. Okay. Approval of minutes, November 9th, 2022. Mr. Fennelly, seconded by Mr. Samaha. I'm going slowly, MJ. All in favor? David?
Yes,
That's unanimous.
yes,
Item B, we have approval of the Wilmington High School Middle School Chorus and Drama Field Trip, May 2023. Is there a motion? We'll do that first. Mr. Samaha, a second. I'm not going to vote yet. A second by Jesse. And then
Wait a minute, okay.
discussion.
Wait a minute, I gotta write minutes.
Okay, sorry. All right, do you
Okay,
want to say a few words? And then I think there are a couple of questions.
Sure. So back in 2019, 2020, so the former drama club director and I were like, oh, what would be a great way to, kind of, again, bridge the gap, have like an 8th grade field trip, where also we combine with the high school and we go to New York and they get to perform in the Broadway workshop, and they get to see the show that they did the Broadway workshop on Broadway. And we did Beetlejuice, which has now become my favorite musical, and we actually got to work with the ensemble, like an ensemble member and like the assistant music director of the show, and then got to see it. And it was just such a great experience. Like my juniors who are 8th grade are still talking about it. Sure. And so I thought like it would be a really great opportunity, and I talked with the high school chorus teacher about doing like a combined 8th grade chorus and high school drama trip, also to help, again, bridge the gap. I'm just gonna keep saying that, and have those connections and do kind of a similar trip. So it will take place over the Memorial Day weekend. It'll take place like we leave on a Friday, get to New York, and then we do the Broadway workshop on a Saturday and go see the show on Saturday.
And return home.
Yep, and
that
return
night.
home Saturday evening.
All right, MJ.
I just had a simple, it's more of a clarity issue. So in the application or the, I'm sorry, I don't have it ready. It spoke, thank you, it spoke to meals included, but in the itinerary from the travel agency, it says lunches aren't.
Yeah, that's.
So I
only-
think just the clarity.
Yeah,
with-
it's, lunch is on our own.
Okay.
So that would be like, we grab like $1 slice from like the, the
Going
pizza.
down and
Yeah.
probably
Yeah, but, I'm gonna coordinate with the
travel company?
travel company, but also our cafeteria, Mary Palin,
Okay.
to see if we can get lunches, provided for the kids on the way down.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Other questions? My only question is the number of students is.
You mentioned that in the
What's happening?
presentation that there's going to be fundraising to try and offset
Yeah.
costs.
Yep.
Do we have a commitment to that every student who wants to be able to go on the trip, that we will be able to find a way for them to do so financially?
Yeah, I'm in talks with the CATS Parent Support Group, who have now become the Wilmington Public Schools, to work with the middle school and high school choral and theater programs to help with some fundraisers. We also have I have a fundraiser planned with the high school group as well, so to help offset some of the costs.
Okay. And then the number of students is 50 to 80. Is that your cap?
Um,
I'm just thinking about that large number.
Oh, yeah,
and I'm
no,
like,
so parents are allowed to be chaperones, like, and I've had parent chaperones in the past. I have a couple teachers coming with me as well. That's just what I guessed.
You imagine it would be.
Between the size of my chorus and then as well as both of our theater programs. So that's my rough guess.
Okay.
So,
Great.
yep.
Anything else? All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? It's unanimous.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, David. Sorry.
Am I delegated to ask him that?
Yes, can you just be in
Yeah.
charge? It's too much to manage. All right. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Tallulah, thank you. Nice to see you, as always. All right, next we have warrants, G14, R16, L3839, FY2223, and CP05. Is there a motion? Mr. Fennelly, seconded by Mrs. Plowman. All in favor?
Taylor?
Yes.
That's so much better. Thank you. That's unanimous. We have warrants sped 17 and 18. Mrs. Plowman, seconded by Mr. Samaha. All in favor? That's unanimous. All right, that brings us to our superintendent's report. Dr. Brand.
Thank you. Two items this evening will go in order, but first I'll turn it over to Ms. Elliott to just give the committee and our committee a little bit of an update on the most recent CIT day.
Well, actually, I talked about the most recent CIT day, but also I figured that since I hadn't reported out on the opening PD days, that we had two different opportunities before this latest. So I figured I'd provide the update today. So we started the school year August 30th, was our first official PD day, where we had our opening day, but then the second day of school was the Professional Development Committee put together a program of offerings, thank you, for our staff, pre-K to 12, to participate in what we call Pick Your Own Workshop PD. So they each attended 3 different sessions over the course of that morning. So that was well received. We had a lot of our own staff that were it was 99%. Led by our own in-house expertise, so that was exciting. And the feedback from the PD committee completed a survey afterwards, and the feedback was really positive, that they felt it was a good way to kick off the year. It was energizing, lots of good ideas to really ignite to get their year started, so that was positive. September 28th, as you know, we did have the ALICE training. All of our staff are trained online every year annually. However, as you may recall, last February break, we had several of our staff members participate in a train the trainer model here, along with members of the Wilmington Police Department, and they became certified ALICE trainers, so that means that they could also do the drills and walk our staff through drill training. So on September 28th, that early release day, all of our schools went through that training with those trainers. And then on the 26th of October was our first official CIT day, which is curriculum improvement time. In the handout this evening, you can see the links to those different documents with the schedules. With our varied start and end times of our schools, it's like quite the jigsaw puzzle putting together professional development for all staff, given the different starts and end times. So we look at the common time that we have, which happens to be from 12:40 to 2:40 is the only time we have everybody available at the same time. So we really try to capitalize on that. So you can see all the variations of things we did. However, the highlights I would make note of, we launched the MARC bullying prevention training for our middle school and high school during that time. The elementary, just as an FYI, actually, they're getting it in 2 sections. They had the first hour of it today, and they have the next hour in December, and then everybody will be fully trained. We also had department meetings, grades 6 through 12 together, really to talk about that vertical alignment of curriculum. So we often are in silos, working in separate because of the start and end times being different. So we were able to strategically plan and have everybody come here. So our CTLs led sessions with grades 6 through 12 together. So that was time well spent. And we also launched our social studies training for the K-5 program that afternoon. So those were the key highlights among the others listed. So happy to answer any questions if people have any.
Mrs. Plowman.
I just had, I think there's so many great things, trainings happening. But I wanted to just touch base on mandated reporting trainings. Is that sort of a scheduled thing that we do, and how frequent is that?
So we do all of our mandated reporting trainings within the first 2 days of the school year, and they're scheduled in by the number of minutes and, that it takes to do each of those trainings. So they do ALICE training, they do the 51A, they do all of those trainings. There's a schedule that gets pushed out, and everybody has to complete all of those annually.
Perfect.
Turner?
Just a quick one. From my understanding, the curriculum PD schedule today is a really, really great way to give people the options to choose what they're most passionate about and really get the most value out of it. So I know it's not something you want to do necessarily every time, because there's unfortunately things you get across in certain cases to everyone. Right. But I think as an occasional loss, that seems like a really, really powerful way. Are you guys able to record? So there's 2 sessions at once that somebody's interested in, they can pick up the other piece?
Well, what we do is we run the sessions usually, we ask the presenter to offer it either twice or 3 times. Okay. So most people can at least get to, if they can't get it in session A, they get it in session B. And then we repeat them after school. We get feedback from participants about, was there something that you couldn't get into that you would really like to see? And we're trying to offer those after school, again, throughout the course of the year for people to pop in and have that experience. We're also planning, based on the feedback, we are looking at repeating this process again for next year. So the committee's starting to work now to start to recruit, and looking at what are the things that were well attended, well received, that we want to either go to the next level, a higher level of that topic, or there's also been questions around, can we create, like, it was great in the beginning of the year to have an intro to that, but now can we offer sort of like a series on specific topics? So we're looking into that as well. So, it's difficult with, I think the feedback was that, we like this because it was led by our own, a lot of it was led by our own teacher leaders, and we have access to those folks. If we found something that was really intriguing to us. It was 45 minutes to an hour, so it was just a taste of it. But now we can go and, get more information from our colleague, or we can see if it can be offered again, that kind of thing. So it's a good opportunity to learn about, honestly, it's a good opportunity in education where things often happen behind closed doors and not everybody knows what everybody else is doing, just to see what other people are doing. And a teacher who thinks that everybody's doing exactly what he's doing, and we might come in and be like, that's pretty amazing. People need to know that you're doing that. So it's an opportunity to showcase some of those things that, day to day, everybody just thinks it's just business as usual, and it's not really. So it was a good opportunity.
I mean, it's encouraging to hear what you're saying. For my own personal teacher bias, it's nice to see a variety of PDs being offered. I really liked the idea of the 6 to 12 department meetings to really work on that vertical alignment, because I think that's what we've seen in, like in the data. And I know we're going to talk about MCAS later on, but I think that's speaking to that stuff as well, so that the kids in middle school are being prepared for what's going to happen when they get to the high school level. So that's just a comment.
And I apologize if you actually already said this, but do you sort of, in your sort of observations of teachers, say to a teacher, like, I wish you would share this? Or do teachers also just come forward and say, I'd like to talk about, like, how do you select them? Yeah.
So we, through the Professional Development Committee, we put out a sort of a flyer, like we start with, what do people want to see as workshops? And we get a list of what we think are, great topics that people are asking for. So we start there. And so we know, some of, or collectively we might say, who do you think would be really good at running this workshop? And so we'll reach out and have a personal invitation and ask them and encourage them and say, if you want to co-facilitate with a friend, you can do that, and try to support them through that. But also we open it up and we put in, through a Google form, like, please apply if you'd like to be a facilitator and offer a workshop. Which is fantastic, because sometimes we get things that we just didn't even know that that was something that they wanted to do, or that they had a strength in. So it's kind of both. And we're, I think part of my personal philosophy around this type of professional development is just building capacity in teacher leadership and providing that opportunity for people who, sometimes, are fantastic but aren't as comfortable stepping into that role of taking that leadership role. It gives them, in a bite-sized, little short workshop, an opportunity to kind of grow and expand in that way. So, and not only is it benefiting presenter, but it's clearly benefiting everybody who is a participant in their workshop. So it's a win-win.
I'm sorry, the application is through Google?
Oh, we do a Google form through our Professional Development Committee, where people can apply to be a facilitator.
I just want to make sure the modality. Thank you. David?
All right, thank you so much, Christina. I'll just take this opportunity to extend my thanks to Christine. It's you see the end result of all of this work, but you can only imagine the nuances and the masterful planning that is necessary and needed behind the scenes. So she does a great job working with the Professional Development Committee and really trying to work to support the ideas that they have to bring forward, but just making it all come to fruition and be able to move out. Thank you. You did a great job with that. The second item under the report tonight is the Joint Town School Administration Building Project, and just I thought it would be it is timely to take just a couple of moments here and bring light to this. There has been a lot of efforts, of course, in the recent days, couple of weeks, leading up to a pretty important week in special town meeting this Saturday. So special town meeting is this Saturday, November 19th, 9 o'clock, here at the Wilmington High School. There has been quite a bit of information that has been pushed out on a couple of different projects. Of course, the Senior Center, as well as the Joint Town School Administration Building. Just to remind, members of the community that both of these projects emerged from the town's facilities master plan in 2018. pointed very clearly to and recognized the needs to improve the conditions at both respective buildings, but also the school administration. The Glen Road School, which is where the town hall currently is located, is also much like all of our elementary schools, certainly very old and tired, and definitely, if to continue in the long term, requires quite a bit of capital improvements. So too is the conditions within which the school district's central office or district leadership works. The Roman House is obviously mostly known by many, but we also have a large complement of staff who also work out of the former Arts Center, right? I think is the building name. Years back used to be, as I understand it, the previous town hall. The central office staff or district leadership staff consists of almost 30 people, representing not just the superintendent's office, but School of Finance and Administration, curriculum, our Office of Student Support Services, Human Resources, as well as technology. We're currently spread out over 4 different locations, one being the Roman House, the second being the Arts Center, and then the West and the high school here as well, too. And so some of the efforts to capture and provide the members of the community with a window in terms of what those conditions look like have been made recently, and we've communicated those with the community. And I know that one of the questions that is looming large, and I know that I've been asked, and perhaps some of you have too, is what happens if the article specifically for the Joint Town School Administration does not pass this Saturday? It's a great question. And the short answer, is that there's not a plan right now in place to facilitate improvements or plan improvements for either the town hall or school administration building. I can't speak, nor will I, to the town hall, but certainly can for the central office staff and the Roman House. And we really are far beyond borrowed time. We work in a facility that has a lot of challenges, including accessibility, and I'll stop there, but except to say, I suppose, that if the article does not pass on Saturday, it is, I firmly believe, incumbent upon us as a committee and administration to work to establish what a plan is going forward. I can go on if you have questions. It's not intended to be so to do so tonight, but certainly there's a lot of challenges that we have, and so that being said, this is again something that was emerged as part of the town's facilities master plan, and hopefully members of the community will consider coming out and attending town meeting on Saturday. But with all of that, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions, Jesse?
I do have one. For the meeting Saturday is at 9 in the morning, and it's here in this building. Knowing that, 250 people constitutes a quorum, do you know, have there been discussions about when doors open? Are we going to open the building at 8, 7, something like that, so that folks have a chance to get in and get settled before sort of the 9 o'clock time comes around?
I believe the plan is to open the doors at 7:30. There's shuttle service as well from St. Dorothy, not St. Dorothy's, what's the church over here? Villanova, Swain School to here, so the doors are opening at 7:30. Handicap accessible parking spots in front of the high school. I think you'll be able to get in through the front doors, the student entrance, which is closest to the Roman House, as well as the events entrance, which is down near the ball field, if you will.
Thank you. Good question. Other questions or comments?
Oh, right. Yes, and thank you to my trusted colleague on my left. Forgive me for also not saying, but also a question that has been raised as it relates specifically to our work, our focus as a school department and the district, that the votes respectively that are being considered at town meeting this Saturday, one for the senior center and one for the joint town hall school administration building, do not have anything at all, nor any point of connection with the Mass School Building Authority project that we're a part of. Thank you, Paul. They are they're entirely separate avenues, if you will, roads that are being pursued. Much more to come on the MSBA project with Wildwood, but a vote one way or the other, if you will, on the two projects being considered this Saturday at special town meeting has nothing to do with the forthcoming MSBA vote on the Wildwood. That will be a couple of years, probably a year and a half away, 2 years away.
Thank you. Mr. Turner?
I believe there will be childcare.
Yes, as well. Childcare offered, that correspondence has gone out to the community, and thank you to 7 or 8 volunteers that we have, students here at the high school, and a member of our care staff that will oversee that. We'll continue to try our best to offer that. That service, if you will, it is contingent ultimately at the end of the day for these meetings on getting folks to step forward. But we've had good luck thus far, and if we can continue to provide that, we will.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'm very hopeful to see our facilities master plan start to come to life a little bit. All right, thank you for that. Next, we have, postponed from last week, our MCAS report, Ms. Elliott.
Okay, so let's see. The only thing that's changed in the slide deck is the date. I just noticed that Tracy must have gone in there and edited it. So this evening's presentation, I will talk about, I wanted to sort of set the stage of state trends and our specific performance for Wilmington over time, as well as what we are doing to help, plans for improvement and what is already underway. Just as a reminder, this is our second MCAS results since the pandemic. We had that year with no scores in 2020. And then 21 was a modified version of MCAS, so this was really the first year of, the full MCAS being administered again since the pandemic. Which is why I feel like it's important to really set some context around state levels, because if we're thinking about our performance or any district's performance right now in comparison to what it might have been like in 2018 or 2019, it's a different story. So I think it's just important to really look at what those trends are. So last year, you may recall during the presentation that basically we talked a little bit about math really taking a dive last year. Our math scores across the state as well as in Wilmington really dropping in math. But our ELA scores here in Wilmington were pretty stable. Like, they declined a little. Some grades actually held their own or increased slightly. We didn't necessarily see a significant drop in ELA last year, and the state fared just pretty well also in ELA, but the math was really hit the hardest. This past year at the state level, you'll see that the ELA really took a dive this year, and math started to show a path to recovery. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's interesting. I can look at theirs. So there was a call with Department of Education that when these results were first released that I participated in, and so these slides are directly from the Department of Ed. So I'm not going to read all of it for you, but I didn't want to amend the slides. I just wanted it to be, to be able to speak to it. So they really are talking about the 2022 MCAS showing mixed results compared to 2021. And like I mentioned, ELA scores declined, math scores increased, science scores increased slightly in the state level. And you'll see in Wilmington, our science scores actually are the strongest of the three. And comparing this to pre-pandemic levels is something that we want to be cautious about, knowing what our students have gone through over the last couple of years. We sat here, and I'm sure you all heard it in the community as well as we did as the school administrators, from people saying, you are really going to give our children MCAS? They've been out of school, so what is this? What's the point of this? So there was a lot of narrative in the community around that. So I think we just need to keep context about where our kids have been over the last 2 years and what that experience has been like for them. I think it's extremely important for us to gather this information so we know exactly where we need to work. So I'm not saying we shouldn't have administered these. I just think the context is important. One of the things that they did caution us about is with the Department of Ed, they said, take your scores and think about them as sort of your baseline right now for this continued path forward in recovery. However, be careful about ELA because they are not confident right now that the ELA scores are going to show the same path of recovery statewide that the math showed. They don't, they didn't explain their rationale behind that, but they said they would not be shocked if they continued to see ELA scores dip for one more year before the recovery started. I will say that so I don't know their thinking behind that, but they did create caution just to be aware of that. I think that, we are seeing our scores pretty much in trend with the state overall, so I just wanted to make a point of that, but we are certainly doing everything in our power to be as aggressive with recovery as we can. They said that in ELA, 2 focus areas for improvement really are the impact of the lower writing scores. So particularly our lower grades of kids who are hybrid and remote or weren't engaged in writing every day, and it was a different type of instruction that they were receiving. So that were formative years for some of our younger students, so it's taking some time to develop those skills. And early literacy challenges overall. And then student absenteeism remains a significant challenge across the board for recovery efforts across the state. They gave us, so I can just, I'm forwarding my slide, but not yours. So here, this chart is from 2019 to 2022, again, skipping 2020. The English Language Arts, this is state results overall. So if you take a look, the ME is the meeting or exceed. So it's the percentage of students who are meeting or exceeding in each of those grade levels. So you can look at the change from 2019 to 2021 in that, so they were single digits except for 8th grade was down 11 points. But if you look collectively, you see the change from 19 to 2022. And it's even more significant, so it's continued to decline. And with the 10th grade having the least negative impact, if you will. So those are pretty significant losses, if you will, in the number of, in the percentage of students meeting and exceeding the standard. For math, ELA still, this is really just talking about the writing scores. The number of test takers that received a score of 0 points on a written essay increased from 19% in 2019 to 31% in 2022. So it definitely has had an impact. And you can see across the board the percent of change for grades 3 to 5 is minus 25%, grades 6 to 8 minus 13%. So that's again, just to clarify, this is state. This is state data. So it's definitely an impact. Mathematics, state data, again, you can see here. This last year, you can see, our numbers were double-digit decline in 19 to 21. And then this year now, you can see across the state the increase that we're seeing. So the recovery for mathematics is definitely, it's on the right path. You can still see the overall net loss, but the pathway of recovery is definitely improving. And science, overall, so we're looking at 5th grade and 8th grade here, 10th grade as well, but the first administration of the next generation science MCAS in grades 10, physics and biology isn't really comparable. They changed tests from the legacy to the next generation. But you can see overall in our 5th grade and in the 5th grade and 8th grade across the state, we had a decline in 19 to 21, a slight improvement this past year. So the overall change is, -6 and -4. You'll see that our scores are actually stronger than the state's overall, I think, that pattern. Attendance, again, is one of the biggest struggles, and much of this was due to students being sick, students being in quarantine, students and staff. being, close contacts before we had the test and stay option. So this chronic absenteeism definitely had an impact. I will say that, and I don't have the hard numbers with me tonight, but I would say that even though we have far fewer students who are out sick with COVID, we still have attendance concerns. Lots of unexcused absences taking place that we didn't see prior to COVID, vacations, things like that, and it's definitely impacting students' ability to get caught up. So, they're missing current curriculum now as we're trying to, do double doses to backfill as well. So that is just something to note that it's still a struggle. So that was all state data. This is our performance, specifically Wilmington over time.
Oh, sorry, MJ.
Only because I didn't want to go too far
Sure.
while you touched upon it. The absenteeism, does that have anything to do, or what would you say the impact of that absenteeism is associated with the mental health of some of our students?
It would be hard to draw those conclusions. I think as a society overall, I feel like people, it was a lot. We all went through so much during COVID. We missed vacations. We missed being able to do things. And so I think that, I would guess that people are making up for lost time, visiting relatives they hadn't been able to see. Maybe those are some of the things. It could be mental health as well that's impacting that. But I would say that from my experience for any from what I'm hearing from principals for students that are out for any point of time, it's more specific vacations than a couple days illness or other types of illnesses.
Okay, thank you.
So I think it's just something we're watching. And, I know that principals have to send home letters to families if they reach a certain threshold of attendance, and those letters have gone out. So, and that's increased compared to other years. So, this next slide is just an overview slide for you for our performance for grades 3 through 12 in ELA, math, and science. And I know it's a little bit hard to see on the screen, but this is a tool that we now have access to. The Department of Ed has partnered with a company called Open Architects, who the department is paying for districts to be able to access this tool, which I found it to be an extremely helpful tool in really doing some deeper analysis of our MCAS scores. So we get different types of graphs that automatically populate. So this is looking more globally at ELA overall as a whole in our district. So if you look to the left, you can see the percentage of proficient was 48.2 as a district overall, and that -12 is compared to our prior year. So overall, we're thinking the definition here of students who are proficient are either those who are meeting or exceeding on MCAS. And to the right of that is the comparison to the state. So we're 7% higher than the state overall right now in ELA. Down below, you'll see the student, the growth percentile. So the average is 47.4. That's up 8 points in ELA compared to our prior year. But our growth is 2 points behind the state. And then below that, you see two trend lines. The colored line is Wilmington, and the dotted line is the state average. So you can see the line, how it's progressed from 2017 and to current day in 2022.
Christy, can you just explain SGP?
Yes, the student growth percentile is, so this is, we're looking, I always am thinking about that target range of between 40 and 60 is where we want to see students score to have, a year's worth of growth would be in that range. And this is determined by comparing them to students who scored similarly the year prior. So they're only being compared against those in the same grade, similar score range from prior to measure that growth. So at the end of the day, we are always looking for the growth rate. I think is far more important than the overall proficiency rate, because that's more telling to us about what we're doing, and is it making, are we making gains, and are we heading in the right direction?
And parents can see this too on their results. So the SG, I always say to parents, the SGP, that helps me know as a parent if my child is making the progress that I would expect or not. So I think that sometimes that's underrated. Like I'm always like, oh no, that's really an important piece, you know. So I think it's
Very
important for people to
powerful.
understand what that is.
And what's the good range, 40 to 60?
Well, 40 to 60 would be, I mean, we're aiming for 50, but within that range, I think it's considered, you know, that would be the expected range to be, you know, closest to 50 we are is where I think is where we want to be. And then you can follow suit. I won't go through all of it with math, but you can see in math we have no red numbers, so that's always a good sign when they're not in red. But our proficiency level 54.7, up 5% from the last year, 16% above the state. Our growth here is 50.9 student growth, which is the 20 points higher than last year, which is great. And then, you know, 1 point above the state. And science, 59.6%, 9% compared to last year, and 18% above the state. And I think that that's the trend line in science that I find the most fascinating when you look at how our kids are doing. You know, the state is, you know, very slight incline, if at all, or just level. We've seen significant growth last year, which is great. So each slide, so that I do apologize, there are a lot of slides in this deck, but I will be quick going through them because they are all the same, and you can take a look at them in more depth at a later point if you would like. But we have each grade level, English language arts and math, and then for grades 5 and 8, we also have the science slide in here. But you'll see the traditional slides you may have seen with the bar graphs from the Department of Ed that are available on school and district profiles on their website that really break apart. So we're looking at the bar graph from 2018 to 2022, and blue is exceeding expectations, green meeting, the orange is partially meeting expectations, and the red is not meeting. And this chart to the right is from Open Architects that I mentioned, the new platform we have. And here, this is new for us this year, we're able to break it down by school. So just to orient you to this slide, Woburn Street School is pink, Shawsheen is purple, and the darker dotted line on the bottom is the state trend. The lighter dotted line in between is our district's overall trend for all grades, so that's sort of in the background. But you can see, you know, it's so interesting in the last year that, you know, the two schools were in different paths, and again, these are each year, from year to year, is a different cohort of students as well, but they landed in the exact same spot this past year in ELA for grade 3. And the next slide is grade 3 mathematics. Again, you can see the two different schools and the state trend. And it's interesting, if you look at Woburn Street, which is pink, the state trend is identical to Woburn Street's trend. And you know, the increase for Shawsheen was a little less, but it's already above, and it's projected to continue in the right path. So again, you can look at both of those charts, but that follows suit with the state trend of the math increase. Grade 4 ELA. Here we are. North is blue and West Intermediate is purple. And so we're still above the state, but we've had some ups and downs. Grade 4 math, North and West are identical, which is fascinating, just to see how they're progressing in the same way. And grade 5 ELA, again, they ended up very close in the same spot, but started in different places, but you can see that they're about the same place.
Stephen?
Is it, besides looking at grade 5 year versus year, is it also a useful way to look at the data, looking at grade 5 class in 2021 versus the grade 6 class in 2022? Because in some cases I saw where the numbers would be very different in, let's say, the not meeting expectations group from 1 year for grade 5 to the next year for grade 6 in ELA. Is it useful to compare across that way, or is it only useful to compare within a grade level, 5 versus 5 versus 5?
So, no, definitely useful to look at cohorts of kids too. So for different purposes,
Yeah.
right? So, we look at this data. I mean, what you get here are 39 of the higher level slides that I tried to pick that I thought would be the most helpful. But we're looking at patterns, cohorts of kids in traveling, because that helps us. If we have the same group of kids, that's a pretty stable group to measure. Is the curriculum meeting their needs? Do we have anything, are there different structures or systems in place that all of a sudden we see drops? So we're able to look at it that way as well. But looking overall year to year, we can see, like, is our 5th grade curriculum in math meeting the needs of our kids? So we look at it, from this level, but we also go in and look at it right down to the item analysis level. And Michelle Levesque pulled out all the slides she shared with me recently that she shared with all the teachers, literally with here we are above the state and, celebrating which questions we did great. And then here we are below the state average on this particular domain or standard. Here is the exact test question or samples of them that we need to, work on with our students. And here are some links in the slides to different materials. She's gone into the pacing guides and she has reordered different lessons, extended, like, okay, we know that we need to do an extra day on this to backfill because our students missed that skill, and then look ahead to the next grade. We need to do that for them, knowing that these kids are coming forward with that. So we've already gone in and done a lot to that level as well. So,
No, Melissa.
Thank you for sharing that specific detail, because I know, I think it speaks to, and so what are we doing?
Right.
And I think that's on the minds of, almost every parent right now in Wilmington and across the state. So there are specific identified people who are supporting you in that process, and it's Ms. Levesque for
Math and
science at the elementary level, correct? Can you just let the community know who's the point person for ELA to sort of look at these scores and dive deep? And I love that analysis that's happening.
Sure. Melissa Betancourt is our new literacy coordinator, and she's doing the same level of detailed work for our ELA scores as well, adjusting pacing guides and supporting teachers. So that's K-5. We have those two ladies. And then for 6 to 12, our curriculum team leaders are doing the same type of MCAS analysis work with their teams as well. And I should also mention, our principals have also done presentations with their staff to work on, to look at all these results and to talk about them maybe, more globally, but they've given every teacher their personal student class scores, individual scores and how students did, and their last year's class scores, so that they're able to look and see from their own personal practice in their own lesson planning, even though our grade as a whole might have done okay, but my students might have missed, maybe I need to do a better job on that particular concept because I had several of my own students last year that missed that. So there's that personal level of reflection that can take place too, and that's facilitated by the principals. Let's see, so grade 5 language arts we talked about. Grade 5 math. You can see significant recovery here, particularly with North, but both schools are on a good path in math. And science, again, significantly above state average, but they are both aligned. I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in these areas and why I think our science scores have maintained, have held steady in a moment. And then grade 6 English language arts, so the orange is Wilmington Middle School, and then the dotted line is the state trend. So here we are below the state trend, so this is definitely something that we are spending a significant amount of time working on. I'll talk about that shortly. And then this is grade 6 math. And grade 7 ELA. and grade 7 math. Grade 8 ELA, and grade 8 math. So we definitely saw in the middle school, the ELA hit much harder than the math. But our grade 8 science is again on that same trajectory above the state. This is ELA, grade 10. So although we took a dip, we were significantly higher than the state average, and that dotted line is our ELA average as well, below that for the district, I think. I'm not sure what that dotted, it is district average, but that might only be secondary. And then our math average, well above the state, but we definitely want to turn that trajectory line in the other direction. And again, because this is a new version of the science, we don't have a trend line, but you can see the blue dot where we landed in science compared to the state. So those are the charts, and I know a question had come through around, and I didn't add it to this presentation, but I can certainly speak to it or provide more information if people want that level of detail. However, we have looked at this data as I mentioned before, through multiple lenses. And another way that I've been doing a lot of work with is looking at it from all of our different subgroups. From an equity perspective, looking at are we able, what are the gaps that we're seeing? Are all of our students, depending on different subgroups, are the trends the same for them, or is it a wider gap that's been created over the last couple of years? So we're looking at special education students and students on 504 plans. We're looking at student by race. We're looking at language learners, so our EL population. We're looking at economically disadvantaged students. So we're going through that analysis for each of the subject matters at each grade, looking at those populations to see if there are any areas that are trending in a different way that we need to, really be concerned about, and to, again, develop as much plan as much as we can to support, some of these subgroups have a wider gap to close, and how are we going to accomplish that? So trying to develop those plans to do so.
Jen? Yeah, sorry. So in saying that, because I know I was one of those, I like seeing how that's broken down, because I think that's a whole nother level to our diverse learners, and that's why I think is another important data point to continue to monitor. So in saying that, so the data and the slides we've just seen incorporates
everybody
that high needs piece. So I would like to see, it doesn't have to be down to the atom, but I would like to see the breakdown only because that growth, as you know, historically, they have usually fallen. And I know we've made gains in that area, but they've usually fallen below meeting expectations, and I think that also speaks to the work that you and your team work, I think it speaks to it, how we closing those gaps. And I think it is a vital role a vital piece when we look at this data to see how all of our students are meeting, are getting the education
they need to.
Yeah, exactly, to the best of their potential and abilities. So, thank you.
Sure. And just to note as well, we are certainly, as we continue to unpack the equity audit, all of this information is a part of that as well. And that much of that was included in the audit, but now we have even more information. So we could look at trends from prior years in that audit, but now we also have updated information to see any gains for the students in particular subgroups. So our plans for improvement, just to talk a little bit about what we are doing. So again, I mentioned already that we have been working on MCAS analysis. So our principals in grades 3 to 5 began that to identify curricular adjustments, looking at the analysis. Our new literacy coordinator, Melissa Betancourt, we are so grateful to have her on board. She has, it's unbelievable what she's accomplished already in a short period of time here in the district. And you may recall last year we had a resignation in the early spring, and we didn't fill it, so we were running without that level of support. So I am very grateful to have Melissa on board. She's run extensive professional development already in the science of reading, phonemic awareness, phonics. She is running multiple, we have fantastic participation. Our teachers are signing up for everything that Melissa's offering after school, and she is, meeting with them on a regular basis, and they're inviting her to their team meetings. So I think it's been a great thing so far. She's also taken a lead with running the data meetings, so that is huge for me to be able to sort of pass the baton so that I can be still present and participate, but not take the lead on that for the ELA piece this year. We've also switched the focus of the professional development that we have through TLA to be focused on making it really more meaningful for our staff. So coming off of our data meetings where they had all this new data about their students, they now took that data, they met with the consultants, and we asked them to use the student-specific data to develop small groups, small strategy groups for teachers to use as intervention in class. So rather than that PD being more global about reading structure, it was really targeted to what does that specific teacher need right now to meet the needs of the kids in their class. So that was that has been going well. The K-5 universal screening is still underway. We've finished all of the first cycle, and so we're really focusing in on elevating the level of interventions this year. Now that we do have a little bit, have Melissa to help with supporting the ELA piece, and Michelle is doing a fantastic job supporting the math through this process. So we're really trying to provide much more structured interventions for teachers to be able to implement in the classroom. We've had to really redeploy our reading specialists to better match the grades with the greatest level of need. All of our data last year showed us where these pockets of kids were that were significantly, who were below, and some schools or some grade levels we had, fewer students, and others were, with more students that needed support. So rather than have what might normally in a typical year be, I work with first grade, you work with second, we've really redeployed. And I should give a huge shout out to our reading specialists who are all jumping through hoops right now this year as well to accommodate Wildwood students, because we don't have the capacity for the one reading specialist to be in 3 buildings 5 days a week supporting these needy 5-year-olds. So they are all picking up kids, readjusting schedules, and everybody's jumping in together to support these students. So that a huge shout out to them. We also added foundations this year to our grade 3. In the district, we only had foundations grades K to 2, so it is a K to 3 program, and so we definitely had the need to add that. We've purchased, we've started to really fill classrooms with materials they need that are aligned with the science of reading, so that we have controlled vocabulary text for students, decodables in their classroom libraries. And we are reconvening, we already have a group who's signed up. We are reconvening our literacy committee this winter to really look at our tier 1 instruction and evaluate that and make some, it'll probably be over, this year and into next year, but we'll look at the best practices based on the most current research and assess whether or not we feel our tier 1 curriculum is meeting that, and if not, making recommendations about how we address that.
Before you move on this, going back to the Wildwood for a minute, in terms of the screening piece that you talked about there and other assessments, do we have comfort that the disrupted kindergarten class we had last year with the move and the disrupted kindergarten class we have this year with the different spaces and our ability to support those spaces, that we'll be able to assess where they are well enough that they don't fall behind, and we don't see in 2 years our grade 3 results having this huge gap between the two different schools?
It's a good question.
So are we able to monitor that enough?
Yes,
to cover?
so we are, all of our kindergarten students will be universally screened with Ames Web 3 times a year. And anybody who is identified as not meeting the expectations will be progress monitored in between those as well. And they're getting intervention every 6 to 8 weeks. So we have made a very clear, our decision was that because of these students being spread amongst 3 locations, we were not going to let that impact their academic support. So that's why our staff are jumping through hoops and running, They joke about they have to dehydrate the day before they come to work because they won't have time for a bathroom break because they are running from group to group, but they're really working hard to try and make sure that every student, we're not watering down any of the intervention for those students. Okay, so then ELA at the grade 6 to 10, 6 to 12, but 6 to 10 level, we are, again, we did the same deep level analysis at each of those subject areas, but Mia Parviainen, our English department CTL, has worked with grade 6 through 10 to go through their results related to MCAS and really pulled specific results for all students who might be in programs as well, and met with each of those teachers to go through those results. They identified any curricular adjustments that needed to happen, like they did at the elementary level, and also looked at specific student needs. I know, that was interesting. Someone's shutting the lights off. I'm done, apparently.
Last call.
I can take a hit.
Mission's over.
So in grades 6 through 8, we are, this is our, I believe, the second year doing it consistently, providing the Literacy Universal Screener iReady. And last year, I think Dr. Quirk mentioned how every staff was trained across all subject matters, not just ELA, about how to interpret that data and how to then apply it into their daily instruction. And so I recently met with the 6th grade ELA team along with Dr. Quirk and Mia Parviainen to start some of that data process, really looking at our rising 5th grade students and where, what is the reality of the students that are now in seat in 6th grade, what are they, how did they end the year last year, what do their MCAS scores look like, what does this iReady screening look like, and we've administered that in the beginning of the year, and they've also run a progress monitoring on specific students that they wanted to check in on. So we've started that work in 6th grade, and we'll continue to launch that in grades 7 and 8 as well. We spent a lot of time really looking at their units. One of the things that I will mention, it's down below, but the grade 6 team rewrote the entire curriculum over this past summer. So that's exciting to me, but we hadn't even seen these results yet, but they knew they needed to do this work to really increase the rigor in the work that they were asking of their students and to create more alignment. So we've gone through all of those units together, and we actually looked at their new units in light of the students' current data, and we asked, so they're looking at, okay, we know we need to spend more time on this particular skill. We have this in this unit. We're going to really add some time to that. We're going to, beef that up so that the kids really have a solid experience with that specific skill. So that's been great.
Sorry, Christine, Melissa?
Just super quick. When you talk about alignment in the 6th grade, do you mean both sides of town? Or alignment?
Well, the 6th grade is one side of town.
Oh, right.
But looking across all the teams, so all of the 6th grade ELA teachers. Yes, exactly,
Perfect.
Alignment there. Yep.
That's what I meant.
Thank God we don't have 2 middle schools too. That would be, that'd be another whole challenge.
Can I ask a question? And this so I'm looking at the all of this curriculum adjustment bit. Is there a piece of teacher observation that's happening as well? Like where teachers can observe one another, but also just like how teachers are teaching writing, for example. Is that being considered as in terms of like, where are the products being done, for example, like writing time is is actually happening in class versus at-home assignments where we know that's really difficult to assess, right? We can't really use that at-home assignment as an assessment because we don't know what sort of supports have been given. So do we really have an accurate portrayal of what that child is doing in writing in our classroom? And so I guess, how is that happening? Because I imagine that's probably somewhat different maybe. So when I'm thinking about alignment, I'm thinking, yes, curricular alignment, but I'm also thinking teaching practice alignment. And I guess and that to me would be a lot of like who's doing the teacher observation piece, I guess. Is
So I would say that that's part of the conversation that Nia Parviainen has. She does, works with the ELA teachers 6 to 8 and does, she partners with Dr. Quirk or one of the assistant principals as far as the evaluation observations go. But part of her, their work during our recent CIT day was really looking at writing samples and talking about that. So they're having those conversations. Whether or not the teachers are observing each other, I'm not fully aware of that, but it's definitely something that, especially as we start to shift our focus on, looking at writing and knowing that we have a lot of work to do to get caught up there, that will be an important part of that process to have that alignment. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, at the middle school, as you've heard, and we talked a little bit about last week, the scheduling committee, we've done this deep dive of analysis of all of this data as part of that committee. And, we've recognized that there are existing structures in place that limit what we can do to provide what students need. So as you heard before, it was identified that ELA was a priority area that we wanted to focus on, and we really wanted to find a way to provide intervention for students that was equitable so that they weren't missing other opportunities for different courses. So we are, obviously this is still something that we're working on, but those were priorities that were identified as part of that process. And I've already spoken about the alignment for ELA and during that CIT time. For math in grades K to 5, so again, math analysis, MCAS analysis with our principals, and then, as I mentioned before, Michelle Levesque also had sent out very specific slides that teachers could use with, links to activities and lessons to focus on. And the universal screening process is still continuing. And again, we've added more concrete, formal goal setting and interventions for our students. You'll see in the preliminary budget documents, we are, that the 5 gen ed tutors, general education tutors that we brought on last year were grant funded. So that, that money is running out. So, I am hoping that we are able to maintain that level of support for next year. We've worked really hard to get this process up and running with intervention, and Michelle Levesque has done a fantastic job really training this crew of tutors to be really targeted in how they're supporting students, and it's been a huge benefit to our district. So hoping to be able to maintain that. We've purchased new resources and materials for math intervention strategy groups, and we're having ongoing PD as well. Michelle is offering different opportunities for teachers to create, make and take activities for strategy groups, as well as rethinking the math block structure. And for grades 6 to 10, similar. Mary Beth Faluke is our math CTL, and she's done a great job. She really got very into the new platform we have for the Open Architects data analysis and was all over that right away, really digging deep into the data and sharing that with her teams. And we added IXL Math for grade 6 this year as an assessment and intervention tool. We had a different program last year, and they felt that it really wasn't beneficial. So they're switching and trying this tool, and so far it seems to be going really well. In the meantime, we use iReady for ELA, but the company offered iReady Math for the remainder of this year as a pilot for no charge for grades 7 and 8. So it's hard to refuse that opportunity. So they are launching that as we speak, getting that up and running, and which will be, I think, very helpful. And again, the scheduling committee, talking about prioritizing the intervention block so that that data that we do gather around students' math will be able to really provide flexible support for students. And they also worked on curriculum vertical alignment. And science. So 22-23, this current school year, is actually year 2, I would say, of our most normal implementation of the new K-8 science curriculum. As you may recall, it was actually purchased, and I had a soft rollout, and then we started to get more into it, and then the school year shut down, so it had a rough start. But I would say overall, you know, this past last year and this year, we are definitely full speed ahead with the elementary. It's K-8 program, so that has definitely been beneficial. We're really seeing a focus on hands-on experiments and trying to really promote that. Again, MCAS analysis, Julie Kim and principals as well, and have done work, as well as we do have a science lead teacher at the elementary level, Amy Iasconi, who has been instrumental in supporting this as well. We have developed, if you're on Instagram, look for WPS STEM. We have, Michelle Levesque has really developed a lot of new STEM initiatives at the K-5, really to promote engagement and interest in science and technology, engineering, and math. Some of these STEM opportunities, she applied for a grant from WEF last year and received it to purchase STEM libraries for our 6 elementary schools. Those are up and running this fall. She put them all together over the summer and got them in school buildings this fall. So amazing resources for teachers and to be able to grab and sign up materials and do these STEM activities in their classrooms. She also has created and shared a variety of different STEM challenges that are optional for teachers to incorporate with, you know, low lift on the teacher, but really fun, engaging, hands-on STEM activities. And you'll see all of these posted online that teachers are taking and seem to really be loving them. But in addition to making those optional, we're building in STEM challenges, school-wide STEM challenges across the different buildings, like 3 times a year, like the day before a holiday break, right? When you want to have as much engagement as you possibly can. So you may have seen recently, you know, kids were given tape, cardboard, and a little mini pumpkin, and they had to develop something to support the weight of the pumpkin. And so really creative, fun ideas, and the kids seem to be loving it. The other piece that I think actually really was so helpful to us over the time we were hybrid or enclosed was that we purchased a license for a program called Generation Genius for K-8 and Explore Learning. It's called Gizmos for grades 6 to 8. So Generation Genius was a library of basically really high quality science-related videos that were standards aligned. So Amy Iasconi aligned these specific videos to our existing science curriculum. So when a teacher couldn't have her kids in front of her all doing hands-on experiments, or even when we came back and they couldn't all share materials, so the teacher had to model it and kids couldn't touch the materials, which goes against everything we believe in, you know, science instruction. They were at least getting content through these high engaging videos. So we feel like that was helpful for our students to at least be getting that content. And the Gizmos is virtual simulations. So even though kids couldn't do them in person, they were able, during that time, they were able to do virtual simulations. So I do think that really helped us maintain hold our own with science. We did vertical alignment there, and then we actually have added a second robotics team at the middle school due to high interest, so there's definitely growing interest there. They received a grant from Google to start the new team, and they have robotics mentors for the middle school from Google and Analog. They're both working, 2 different people are working with their team, so that's pretty exciting. So that's really where we left off with, you know, what it's not necessarily things that we're doing differently related to science, but just wanted to capture the things that we are doing, because I feel like it's heading, you know, pushing us in the right direction. So I'm happy to take questions. Aren't you glad this wasn't last week?
Yes, I am.
Starting at 9:30?
Thank you. Thank you for that, Christine, and for all that work. That's really helpful for all of us to see. Questions, comments?
David, do you have one? Or did we lose you?
He's like,
No, I'm here.
All right, just wanted to check with you first.
Sure, I have one
Choco?
thing to say.
Go slow.
I think that, I'd like to comment a little bit about, there was a little bit of discussion earlier about growth percentiles, the SGPs, and so between that 40 to 60% growth is generally considered kind of moderate growth, and above 60% is relatively high growth, so low growth. So the higher your growth is, the better. It's fine to be in the middle, but certainly, when you see higher growth, you're happy for it because it means that relative to how other people did with the same scores last year, these students have, increased more, have learned more in those particular areas. So it is worth keeping an eye on. Growth doesn't tell the whole story, and proficiency doesn't tell the whole story, which is why it's important to look at both of them. Growth is good, especially helpful when we're coming out of times like we have the last couple of years. But you have to look at it in conjunction with proficiency to see where our students actually are. So they're really not quite two sides of the same coin. That's not the right metaphor there. But they're both important components of looking at how we're doing. Kind of like how are we doing relative to others, and sort of how are our students growing and improving, but also where are they on sort of the absolute standard, are they getting towards meeting and exceeding expectations. That's also something that's worth noting. So special attention is being pointed out for grade 6 ELA because we have one of our lower percentages of meeting and exceeding for that grade and subject below the state level. I also want to point out at that level that we also have the lowest growth, so that's also where we're in the 37th percentile for average growth, so that's also kind of reflective of those other scores, and relatively high percentages not meeting expectations. So 15% of the students also not meeting expectations category. So all of those things kind of are pointing to that as an area of attention, which fortunately is being attended to. And then the only other thing that I found somewhat interesting and wanted to point out is because we have these kind of sister schools, when we can look at the north and the west together, and we can look at Woburn Street and Shawshing together. It's always interesting when there's anything that looks disparate between those results. And I think the ones that jumped out at me were at the west. For grade 4 ELA, we had 42% of students meeting or exceeding expectations this year, and 57% at the north. So a pretty substantial 15 percentage point difference between those schools. And it gives, I think, possibly an area for for looking to see if there's any explanation for that, any difference about what the students receive at the school. That can be a lesson for us, or something to think about going forward, because we basically have a good control of that sense, because the kids are part of the same community, so much is the same. To the extent that we can determine anything that might have been different, that might point towards something useful for us to try and replicate everywhere.
Can I?
Do you want to respond to that first? Yeah.
Thank you, David. All really good points. And yes, part of being able to really look at it by school for me is looking back several years, right? Not, because we're looking at different cohorts of kids in each of those different buildings. So that can, tracking cohorts I think is helpful, but also looking at several years comparison to really be able to draw some conclusions. Is it instructional approach? Is the curriculum, are there variations in how the curriculum is being implemented? So definitely an area that, I'm able to really look and dig deep and go back historically and look at those trends. And also even looking at are there staffing changes that have happened where we have several new teachers who may not have had the same level of training on a particular program that the former teachers have had. So that is information that I can use to help really determine what the needs are for professional development for staff.
MJ?
I just wanted to also point out that that's been really a longstanding conversation in our district. And I think that has been something that the district continues to focus on, to try to balance and I think this is with, in speaking to getting teams together, and you've spoken about that several times from both sides of town, and the challenges that takes. Because there is that off balance from year to year at some points. And looking at it, seeing what part in the curriculum each side of town is for certain, like ELA or math, trying to balance that out so they're all on the same. Because prior to that, I don't think that there was alignment as to what each side of town was teaching at the same time. And I think that's where some teachers were ahead of the program, while others weren't on the subject matter. And I think in years past, that has come up in conversation MCAS results about how they weren't all on the same piece of the same area of the curriculum at the same time when MCAS was taken at any particular year. And I think there's gains that we've made prior to COVID. COVID really threw me off, and I don't know where the new starting place is, but I think that has always been an historical situation where when there's not, this is closer than I've seen, but it's still not, in that area.
It's all good data. I think we have, just so you know, our curriculum and pacing alignment it's exact across town. They don't have different, guidelines. We struggle. The teams, never the twain shall meet, because they work in different buildings at different times. So we don't have the luxury of all third grade teachers across the district coming together on a regular basis to connect and plan, and because of just the logistics of building start and end times. So that's a struggle, because it's hard to really have those conversations and in that kind of PLC for all third grade teachers, for example, because of the structures that we have in place. But we are certainly, I feel like, if I could only clone, and I won't say that during budget season, but if I could only clone Melissa and Michelle, because I need 3 more of them to be able to really support teachers in the way that they are receptive to and wanting the help, that's really how we get that alignment and we get the consistency when you've got somebody to kind of say, kind of be coaches for them and keep moving them in that direction. But
Melissa, and then Jay?
I'm thinking more about David's point about the 6th grade ELA scores, which would be our current 7th grade, right? And in sort of looking at the plan for improvement at the 6th to 10th grade level, I feel like a lot of the improvement plans are kind of systemic, like scheduling and data analysis and like looking at what we need to do like in the future. But I'm a little bit, I'm just concerned about the current, how to support these kiddos currently. I know I plan as a parent to look more closely at my child's scores, and can you just guide parents and tell them? So I guess I have a couple questions, like what can we do concretely, or what are teachers planning to do concretely in their classrooms before we can get that intervention block into the middle school schedule, and before we can make these curriculum adjustments? Although the 6th grade did that, I'm thinking about what about 7th grade and 8th grade? So students this year are basically, I'm assuming, going to be doing a lot of the same curriculum as they have in the past.
Yeah, so they have done, that level of analysis to really look at, okay, these are our students in seat now, and these are some of the gaps they have. So we do need to look at how we've paced things and what we need to, we need to spend more time pre-teaching this before we launch into this. So there's that level that has happened. And they do have, and like I mentioned, I'll be meeting with grades 7 and 8 as well, to look at, particularly with the ELA teams, to really dig into the student data, the current student data in seat, and what they're doing to really address those needs in the classroom right now. We do have, reading strategy classes and all of that, but those are, what we find that are difficult is that they're scheduled and they're not fluid in the way that normally at the elementary level with reading support can be more fluid. But we are, literally making changes to kids' schedules because we need to make sure they're getting what they need. So it's not typically how we would normally do it, but we're talking with parents and saying, based on the data we have now, we think that your child either needs this or, we actually have had the opposite situation too. We have a student who last spring, based on the data, got scheduled into a reading strategies class, but now that he's made significant growth, and it might have just, not sure what was going on last year, but he's on grade level, doing great, and he's in a reading strategies class because we had to use last year's data to determine the schedule, right? So it's silly for that student to stay there when they could be in some other spot, to have a different course. So we're talking about making those adjustments this year, which we normally wouldn't do in the middle of a, school schedule, but really trying to be more reactive to what the students' needs are as opposed to just letting the schedule dictate how we're supporting kids. So there's that. Just really constantly trying to look at, dig deep into the existing curricular units and find, where we need to make those adjustments, I think is what we're really, our next step. But we will be continuing to do that screening for 7th and 8th as well, and really looking at that data to make sure we're, recognizing what student needs are and how we're making plans individually of how we're going to meet those. As far as parents' recommendations, I've actually had a couple parents reach out to me, about, my child didn't do as well on the writing part of the MCAS that I was surprised how poorly they did. And so one of the things that was particularly more at the lower grade level, but I think at any grade level, the more we can get kids just reading and writing, without reading for pleasure, practicing writing about what they're reading, any of that can be done at home as just to build up that practice with it. We know that kids who are strong, are avid readers are usually the best writers because they're exposed to so much more vocabulary and good literature and structure of language. So they definitely go hand in hand. So really promoting kids reading at home and writing at home as well.
Can you tell parents how they can dive deeper into their kids' MCAS scores? I think Dr.
I wonder. Yeah, I think it would probably be helpful to do an MCAS, like a workshop for families almost, just so they can understand what they're reading. I think for those of us who are really familiar with it, Jeff and I quickly know what to look for, but I think it's probably tricky for families. So even if it's, or even just like a webinar or just you recording something, here's where you want to look, here's the graph you want to look at, here's where you can see the sorts of questions they didn't, I think that would probably be really helpful.
WCTV moment.
It's a Wildcat corner now. But I think that would be helpful. I answer lots of questions like that, so I think that could be helpful to show families just how to utilize that. Because it does, it really does provide quite a bit of information. Again, it's one data point, but as a parent of 2 children, I find it to be a pretty good data point for me to see. And it usually aligns with what I would have imagined. I'm like, yep, that's what I predicted. Can I just jump in real fast? I know Jay was trying to, but along this line, I think that, so what I'm seeing a lot in these plans for improvement, and I do want to differentiate reading and writing, because I think that I don't know specifically those grade 6, 7, 8 scores, but I'm guessing where we're really falling is going to be some of that writing. And so if I'm looking at this as an administrator, I'm like, okay, what's happening in the teaching of writing. Because although children can obviously learn the skill of writing from there is a very clear way to teach writing, right? And so I'm looking at some of the questions. So parents can pull up practice tests, so you can see actually what your kids are taking. And so there's this one from grade 7. This was a practice test. Here's where I think from my experience as a parent and watching sort of the writing instruction, because this isn't just 6, 7, 8. They're learning some of these skills in elementary. So if we're not doing what I would call like a writing workshop, where kids are building narratives over time, learning how to write persuasion based on things they care about. If we're only writing in response to text, that's going to help them on some of this. But on this one, for example, this is where I imagine some of the struggle is going to come. Based on the excerpt from The Lost Years of Merlin, which is the text they just read, write a narrative that tells what will likely happen to the boy next. Use what you know about the characters, setting, and events from the excerpt to write your narrative. They're writing on, they're not going back, they're not highlighting, they're not annotating. They have to construct this on their own. And that's where I wonder, and again, I'm not in these classrooms, but that's why I asked a little bit about what's happening in these spaces. I just have my experience as a parent of 2 children who have come through Wilmington, but as a teacher of writing, I teach teachers how to teach writing. I'm kind of like, and it's actually not super common to have classes that teach teachers how to teach writing. It's reading instruction, reading methods, and writing is tucked in. But teaching writing is its own art and its own science, and there's something very specific about that. So I imagine Wilmington's not alone in this. I mean, I think this is, many schools I'm in, we're doing writing in response to text, writing in response to text, using evidence from the text. And that's one piece of writing. But this is the piece I wonder, are we doing this justice?
So I will tell you that for the K-5 level, they are using that writer's workshop model, and they are going through that whole writing process in each of the different domains of writing. So they're doing informational writing, they're doing narrative, and they're doing argument and opinion pieces as well. So those are repetitive, and we're cycling through those regularly, as well as responding to text as well. But honestly, that's more in reader's workshop that they're responding to text. But there is very explicit instruction in writing. I would say that once they get to middle school, they're not taking a separate, we have separate blocks of time at the elementary level for reading and writing. The middle school, it becomes English language arts, so it's more integrated, as it typically is in a middle school setting or through secondary level. So just from the firsthand experience I had going through the new curriculum that was written by the 6th grade team and Mia Parviainen, it does certainly incorporate all of those different domains of writing, different genres of writing, and there is explicit instruction embedded within it. It's probably less explicit instruction than you're having at a lower grade level that is simply talking about the writing process and going through all of that. It's a little bit more at the application level, but they are definitely doing, narrative writing. They're doing each of those different domains as well. So I think, obviously, as in any curriculum, there's certainly room for growth, and we need to certainly look at what's happening here. But that is part of our curriculum, just.
Can I jump in here on this issue? It's specific, it's interesting. I'd like to question the item that you read, because I can tell you that there are many students who struggle with the narrative writing on MCAS, and many of them don't write a narrative. Like in a question like that, they just describe what they think will have next, but don't actually write the story. They don't write in the narrative mode. And some who do just take it as an invitation to just kind of take the story wherever they want to go. They just kind of see it as, oh, well, I just have this character, and it's a jumping off point, and now I'm just going to kind of go wherever I want to, rather than trying to actually go back in and use the information that was presented to construct the rest of the narrative. And I also want to mention that there's going to be a webinar on December 12th from DESE on ELA writing expectations, with focus on narrative writing, presenting information about the scoring and reviewing sample student responses. So I would definitely encourage the people from our district to attend that.
saw that today. Thank you.
David. Jay, I'm sorry. I went off on my,
That's
my
okay.
tangent. You know, I get very passionate about this stuff.
And it's actually a little, I think you sort of touched on it as well, but I like to think of, to take this all in perspective and to understand that we are talking about one data point. And a lot of times people can interpret MCAS as the end-all be-all. Your school is, you're doing great in ELA if your ELA scores are great. You're doing horrible in math if your math scores are bad, which isn't always necessarily the case. So as I'm looking through the slides, I think it's important to note that some of the plans for improvement are things like the IXL and iReady, the universal screening, which are our own measures as well. Hopefully we see results on MCAS, because I'm not saying MCAS is not important, but I think seeing growth in all of these other data points is of importance as well. So, you know, when we're talking about, you know, parents and I think families sort of like understanding like their MCAS score, you know, it would be nice if they're also understanding what are these other measures that the schools, you know, that schools using. So
100%.
really, you know, taking a look, you know, at all of the data, and just because, you know, your kid might not have scored well on the MCAS doesn't mean that they're not successful. So I just wanted to add that perspective.
Thanks, Jay. And that's helpful. And my other question, iReady, I think they may have done, I think I may have seen bits of it because we may have done it at home during COVID. Is that possible?
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially. And that's not, so it says literacy universal screening. Is there there's not an assessment for writing in there, or is there? Are they assessed in writing on that screening?
I do not believe they are.
It's just comprehension, right? They read, they answer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's more, it's mostly comprehension.
And so I guess my question is,
It actually goes down to phonemic awareness, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We get all strands, all the way up through phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, comprehension.
But not writing?
Not writing.
So what do we have, I guess, for assessing writing at that middle level? Other than like a performance-based assessment, I guess, and are we doing that?
I don't believe there's anything universal.
Okay. Might there be at some point?
Sounds like there might be.
But it exists.
Well, I believe, I don't, like, what I mean by universal is there isn't like a universal screening period that everybody does a writing assessment 6 to 8. A team probably has, you know, they are all assigning the same writing assignments and scoring them with the same rubrics, and having conversations and, you know, at the team level or the grade level. But when I say there's not something universal, I mean it's not like an iReady that is a standard norm-based assessment tool that we're administering to everybody 3 times a year. It's not like that. It's more, you know, like at the high school, it's more like subject matter based. You know, it's not, where at the elementary, it's global and universal across. So it's a little bit different, but there aren't that many, well, maybe you know of some, great online resources to really assess writing. It's conventions that they get.
It's going to be more like a performance-based, but something, I mean, you could make it somewhat.
Yeah.
If everyone's doing it, they're not taking it home, they're doing it over a period of time where they can go through the writing process. Like, it has to give you an accurate portrayal of what a child could actually do.
Yeah.
On a test like this. I mean, it's an on-demand,
Yeah,
you
it's
know.
on
they
demand.
don't
So it's
have-
really not even over time. It's a
Right.
one-sitting
I mean, they don't really
assessment.
have, and I think it's important not to just do that again and again, but for teachers to have a sense of what can my students do on demand.
Yep.
And then I break from that and I teach much more comprehensively and bring them through the process in the correct way, but then every once in a while, you know, try another.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's just, it's good to have an accurate portrayal, because sometimes when they bring them through the whole process and they're working on things for a week at a time, it's hard to know,
Yeah.
like, how much did I give them? How much support did I give them, even as a teacher?
And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do is, you know, work with students to get through that process and teach them along the way. So
Right, 100%.
So that's
100%.
not an assessment, that's instruction, but the on-demand writing assignment occasionally is the assessment piece to really look at what they can do cold without the process.
Right. I mean, even if it's just the or twice, I mean, even 3 times a year to follow this iReady, there's a performance-based, you know, so that we can look at something that says, like, oh, here's where my student was in the fall. This was all the instruction. This is where I see them in the winter. I think it would give us a better indication of how they're going to perform on that MCAS open response. But, sorry, Melissa.
Your conversation is making me think about something we just touched a little bit on last meeting, which was, are the grades that kids are getting in class aligning with these standardized tests? And so when we think about grading, are teachers grading on the process of their ability to you know, take the correction, use the instruction that they've received, you know, tweak it, and then they get this end grade that's like A. But then when they sit to actually take a test on demand, they're not performing that way. And I guess I'm not a teacher, so I don't know, like, what is the philosophy and the thought about allowing for corrections? So like a kid might take a math test and they can make corrections and improve their grade up to a certain number. But what is the sort of standard around that? And I don't know.
I will say that the elementary philosophy is you know, it's really where it's a measure of have the students reach the standards at that grading point, right? So it's less about scores and a rank book and all of that. It's really about, does the student demonstrate proficiency of that standard when they get to their, you know, get to that point, using a standards-based grading system at the elementary schools. At the high school, we have, you know, it's the percentage scores like they do at the middle school. However, over the last few years, they've launched into really doing work around equity in grading. They've done a lot, you know, the majority of high school teachers have been a part of these committees that have been running, reading these books and learning more about this and adjusting their grading practices to be more equitable for students, with the ultimate end goal of students, you know, having it be less about the grade on the paper and more about the fact that students take the initiative to want to come back, relearn the material, try again, and have an opportunity to improve their score, but ultimately have the opportunity to gain the knowledge that they might have missed in the first round of that instruction. So they're having lots of good, really great conversations at the high school level about, okay, but does that inflate our scores? And, you know, at the end of the day, we want our kids to leave here. I mean, I think, you know, at the end of the day, we want them to leave here with the knowledge they need to be successful beyond high school, regardless of what goes on a report card. So it becomes, you know, they're trying now here at the high school to fine tune and be more consistent with what those makeup policies and options look like for kids. There will be assessments that there's no makeups. It is at the end of that term, you know, let's demonstrate now, like we just said, cold, that you can do all of this without having opportunity for revision. But, you know, there's the question of, you know, if a student doesn't do well on something, knowing how percentage grades can have such a impact, such a negative impact on students. You know, if they get 1 grade, when you look at that 100% scale, it definitely can skew an entire term for a student or an entire grade for the end of the year, where it might have just been a bad day for that student and it was a bad assessment. So, you know, really looking at what's fair and equitable for reporting grades. I struggle with the whole grading conversation because at the end of the day, there's so much energy involved in talking about grades that could be spent on helping kids access information as opposed to spending all this time. Because if we were to, I'm going to be honest with you, from my own personal experience, if you, so grades can get inflated because of effort, because of homework, depending on how teachers count that towards the overall grade. If we were to send out grades that were, you know, that didn't include some of those pieces, the pushback from the community would be significant that my child isn't getting an A, right? So do we spend our energy and time, you know, debating the you know, all of that, or do we really spend our energy and time moving kids along to get them what they need? So it's definitely a subject that is universal. It's not unique to Wilmington that there are grades that, higher percentage of kids on honor rolls than match our MCAS data. I don't think that that's unique here at all, but it's definitely something that we do see in the data.
So I wonder if, at the middle school, we don't just consider standards-based. I mean, I'm not sure what and this whole idea of, we're preparing them for blank. I'm like, it's really not really how it works. Like, I mean, we're preparing them for college, then my plan is to get them to be as expert as I can. And so I'm going to get them there however I can get them there.
Right.
And
Or
so,
trades.
What's that?
Or trades.
Yep.
Yeah, or trades.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. I mean, you're preparing for
What comes
mastery.
after senior year, right.
And
Exactly.
if you're preparing for mastery, to me, that's not, like even on when we're, observing our student teachers and getting them ready for licensure, it's not about the grade they get in practicum, it's about, are they meeting
They're going to be able to do
Are
the
they meeting
job.
those elements at a proficient level? And that's very clear, like what that looks like is very clear. So it doesn't, the A, the B, whatever,
It's
what
kind of
matters is that
arbitrary.
you're meeting it proficiently. And so that's what, as a parent, like I'm more concerned with, I see this, but is he meeting the standard? That's what I want to know. And so I think we as a community need to like wrap around that a little more and say, because then we do see grade 6, 7, and 8, I mean, ELA below the state, and we've got hundreds of kids in honor roll. You're like, what's happening here? And again, to Jay's point, it is one data point, but that's important to notice, right? Like, we need to pay attention to that. And if you're right, if we spend a little less time worrying about getting things into Aspen and more time thinking about, is so-and-so meeting this particular standard this week, I wonder if we wouldn't, our kids wouldn't be in a better place. But anyway, this is really, really digressed. I don't know what happened here. Sorry, Jesse. I think you did put your coat on? Like, what's happening right now?
The lights went out, he's putting his coat on.
Yeah, I turned the lights off.
All right, are we good to move on? We didn't save all of the world's problems, but this was an excellent report, lots to think about, lots of work.
Thank you for.
I can't imagine what goes on in your very little corner of the Roman House. But we are
over
so
there.
very grateful for all the work you're doing, and I know and I see it day by day. Just things are just moving forward in such a strong way. So thank you, and thank you to everybody for being so committed to this work. And all right, Paul, it's you. This will be quick.
In a few words.
Not a 37 slides presentation.
No. Thank you. So in your packet is the final FY22 revolving report. As you can see, all the revolving balances are in the black at the end of the FY22 fiscal year. I will point out that the reports that are accompanying the summary sheet are much different than what you've seen in the past. We moved from SoftWrite, our financial accounting software, to Munis. It was quite a challenge since we cut over on May 1st. I did, on the Munis reports, put little check marks next to the numbers that support what's on the summary sheet, so you can see how it works. Some of the titles on the Munis report don't necessarily make sense, but we're still learning as well. So the summary report is supported by the Munis detail report. So as you can see, all the balances are in the black. Will notice that the food service has quite a ending balance, if you will, and a lot of that has to do with, as you know, we have free lunch for all the students and get federal reimbursement and so forth, and the tremendous amount of work that Mary Palin and her staff have done throughout the pandemic, and from giving meals out on when we didn't have school during the day and so forth, that all brought in revenue for the food service revolving account. So.
Okay. Do you need anything from us?
Nope.
Okay. Any questions? Jesse?
Well, anything jump out as surprising or unexpected outside of sort of the normal course of business?
Yeah, not really, other than, as I mentioned, the food service balance is pretty high, but, part of that was the revenue we brought in And also Mary has been operating with kind of short-staffed as well as everyone seems to be. So that's one area that, and she'll be spending that money on various, probably capital projects within the food service department.
Thanks, Paul. Good. All right. Dr. Brand, finance and budget updates.
Thank you. And I'll just, just for the committee's knowledge, he's a man of few words and covered that pretty briefly. This transition, of which I've not been a part of, but Paul has, Andrea and Ken, along with Lauren, has consumed, and Michelle, double-digit days. It has been unbelievable, the amount of time that they have had to put in for this transition to the Munis program. All day yesterday, all day today, and that's on top of probably, I don't know, I'm not exaggerating, it's probably been 20 plus, 30 plus days, maybe more. It's unbelievable. So we are working under Paul's leadership very closely with the town in this transition. It was the direction that they wanted to take. But just so that you're aware, that's an awful lot of work behind the scenes with this. Related loosely, not loosely to Munis, but just budget, finance and budget updates, just very briefly. Tonight we are obviously heading towards budget season, and you know that. But I think just important to give you and the community at large a sense of some of the things that we're focused on and some of the concerns as well as it relates to what really cannot be underestimated as growing concerns with the budget picture going forward for fiscal year 24 or 2023-24. For a number of different reasons. First and foremost, we recognize and understand, like all communities, that there's going to be a lot of strain with the financial situation at large right now. So Wilmington certainly won't be unique in that, and we recognize and understand that. We will talk more about all of this, in the near-term future, but some of the big picture items that you'll hear about, we know right now that for our out-of-district placements for student tuitions, that the state, again, I forget the OSD office, I can't remember the acronym for that either, has authorized these entities, organizations, to increase their tuitions by 14%, up to 14%. That would be akin to, a gas company being allowed to increase for your consumer gas expenditure up to 14% increase. We have no choice in this, and like most districts around, this amounts to tuitions amount to millions of dollars. This is right out of the gate a significant increase that we'll talk more about. We are out to bid for a new transportation contract. We supply through our operating budget the full expenditure and expenses for student transportation. It is $1 million plus operation, closer to I think $1.1 million. That bid will be back mid-December, early to mid-December. Like you can appreciate if you are the operator of a vehicle right now, the expenses, what that comes back with an unknown increase is we're anticipating to be significant. Will that be 10%? Will that be 20%? Unknown right now. But we'll know that by the time I think that we convene for the budget, or thereabouts, in December anyway. So you have the tuitions, you have the transportation. We have a number of positions, as you know, and as you supported as a committee here, funded through the grant money associated with, or coming out of COVID. Forgetting that.
Yes,
sir. Thank you very much. A number of positions. The math tutors is just one. There's many others, as you know, and we talked about extensively before. The money for essentially all of those grant positions is expiring at the end of this fiscal year. So we have to grapple with what we're going to do with those positions as well. And non-personnel costs, non-salary costs going up just in general across the board. Well, that's about 20% of our operating budget. It's certainly a portion that's important to consider. We have no change in enrollment at the elementary level. At net change at the district level is minus 15 students. We will continue to be looking at, and we'll talk again more about this around where we think we might be able to make adjustments at the secondary level, but at the elementary level, We see right now on the horizon no change of enrollment or sections. So that'll be a steady state. So we're going to talk a lot more about this, but in terms of that, December 21st is still slated as the preliminary budget presentation. This was all part of the schedule that Paul put together for you previously. December 21st, though, is the first formal budget presentation. January 18th is the superintendent's recommended budget for fiscal year 24, and February 15th is the public hearing. We are staying on course with that schedule. That has been shared with the town manager, the finance committee. Should have been shared with the finance committee. I will share that with the chair and vice chair's approval, as we talk about the agenda planning for the next meeting, which is December 7th. So that's before the December 21st meeting that I mentioned a moment ago for the preliminary budget presentation. But I am working with Alice and Sula to provide you as a committee with a little bit of a deeper dive around special education, and related to that, some of the growing and real challenges that we are continuing to have, like I'm sure all districts, specifically with special education. The thinking here is not to specifically separate it from the budget presentation, but I feel like it's enough of a story, if you will, that it's not fiction, but you know what I mean, a presentation to focus your attention on that ahead of when we get into the budget conversation.
One of our bigger expenditures next to
For
payroll,
sure, for sure. So anyway, not to be overly doom and gloom here, but there's a lot of concern, certainly, right out of the gate here, to be honest. So we'll keep you updated. We'll head into December, and that December 7th, again, if Jen and Dave are fine with adding to the agenda, we'll do so. And then the 21st will be the first sort of big picture look at the budget.
Very quick.
Stephen?
Thank you. Do we have any indication we're going to get more than one bidder for the transportation contract? I know some concerns that there might be only one bidder.
We've had about 6 or 7 firms request the invitation for bids. It was due, it was available today at 10 o'clock. Some of those are actually like sales, if you will. But the last time we did it as well, a bunch of companies requested the invitation. They did not bid, so you just don't know.
Yeah.
We have like 60 in that area so far.
Thank you. Or, sorry, unless there's other questions.
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
All right. Item D, earlier we discussed the substitute rate of pay increase. I'd like to take a vote in public, so I'll make a motion to increase the substitute rate of pay. Is there a second? Mr. Samaha, all in favor?
Yeah.
That's unanimous. I don't know why I find this so funny today.
It's in my field of vision between me and
It's like a Saturday Night Live skit or something. Our next item of business is public comment. There is no one in the audience. However, we did receive 2 written public comments that we reviewed before the meeting. That brings us to subcommittee reports. MJ. Sorry, too fast? So MJ did supply us with a report of the MASC annual division, or MASC conference, and then her report on the annual Division 1 meeting. I'm going to give her a minute to pull it up because she's also taking minutes for us.
So thank you.
Hand.
So overall, it was a very successful conference, and I really, on this note, would like to defer to Steve and Dave on their overall experience at conference. A lot of the workshops, did surround around social emotional learning, mental health areas of focus. But did you want to speak before I get into the depths?
Sure.
Of the detail?
I'd be happy to. It was a fantastic conference, tremendous amount of learning and interactions with colleagues on other school committees across the state, particularly some of the programming on special education and also finance and budgets. But the general sessions were really good. And part of what was particularly noticeable about the social emotional learning part was the reflective piece where it's the children have really struggled through COVID and through all the recent changes and with their social emotional state, but also that it extends to the teachers, it extends to the central office, and that part of the overall health and well-being well-being of any district, making sure we're attentive to all the needs across those groups, because asking teachers to help support students when they're also struggling themselves is a difficult place for them, and really being aware and how we ask the questions and how we work with our staff. Again, also extending to the central office as well. And so that was a very, very good session and very, very good information. And I very enjoyable conference.
Dave, would you like to make a comment?
I think I just will echo what the student said, that there was a lot of good sessions, and it was nice to be able to interact with the school committee members. Sometimes you really need someone else who does your job in another district to get some fresh ideas, but also just be a sympathetic ear for the work we do. And I think that's in addition to the value of the sessions themselves, being able to talk with other people in other districts is one of the best things about it.
Great, oh, great. So thank you so much. So let me get into the depths of this. So I'm going to start with the Division I meeting, since we're all members of the division. We met on Friday, November 4th. Beverly Griffin Dunn of Peabody School Committee and North Shore Agricultural and Technical School is our chair one in our division. I sit as your vice chair, and Bridget Gababedian of Tewksbury is the secretary treasurer. So every conference we do get together to go over what MASC is and the resources they offer, and the variety of workshops, encouraging board members to sign up for MASC. So 'cause there's a lot of workshops hosted by a variety of the different divisions and different topics. A lot of them done, I think they're still done virtually for the most part. So it's always good to peruse the MASC workshop for offered workshops from other divisions. So a big push as division officers, we are opening ourselves up to the school boards within our division to talk about some of the resources and benefits MASC has to offer boards. One of which is joining one of the several MASC subcommittees. And on these committees, they're all looking for membership, but they're important in driving not only the work that we deal with within our districts, but the work for public education at a state level and federal level. And there is some tie-in with the National School Board Association, which truly advocates in all the areas of the Senate and Congress for public education, and the topics that are and concerns that are faced in public schools. So some of the committees that are open up to membership is the MIAA committee, which is the advisory on school sports, and well, I don't have to tell you, I think a lot of people in sports know what MIAA is. It's the Association for Athletics. There's a nominating committee for the lifetime membership and all state members that MASC, sorry, I'm struggling now. MASC has every year, where the awardees are announced at the conferences. The resolution committee, which is a very interesting committee, they're the ones who put together and review resolutions that are brought in for our delegate assembly every year. So that's an interesting board to sit on. The other one is legislative committee. They advocate at both the state and federal level for those resolutions that we vote on at the delegate assembly each year. And they also are informative with any legislative changes that come down from state and federal laws to notify all boards of these changes, such as I think we had one regarding the disciplinary laws affect the state, so that was pushed out to members on the listserv, which is another area of a great information gathering. There's a special education committee. Again, They work together to write resolutions for advocacy. And then we have the advocacy committee, which is, they all kind of work together, and many of the members are on them because they're just so, it's very similar in the work that they do. Again, there are 4 additional groups that are open to all members. One is the Division 9, which is the Urban Committee, which is open to small communities too that are, in their judgment or opinion, urban in nature. There's the Division 10 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. There's the Minority Caucus, and then at the MSBA level, there's the American Indian Alaska Native Council. The New England Regional Director of that council is Nicole Bartlett, who is also the Division 3 Chair and Mashpee School Committee Chair, I believe. So there's any interest with any possible workshops that you'd like to see. I know that in our discussion, there's a lot about stepping off of some of the workshops and expanding upon them with regards to school finance, school spending. Contract negotiations was a big conversation actually at this year's conference as well. Parliamentary procedures and oversight, educational oversight in those areas. We do ask that, well, you know how to reach me, but if anyone has anything interested that they would like to see hosted throughout the year, you don't have to wait for conference for it to be presented. Just feel free to reach out to one of us division officers. We will be meeting to discuss this year's workshops. Now to go on to our delegate assembly. This year was a little different where only the delegates were in a room voting on the resolutions. There weren't any non-voters in attendance. Again, it's our 77th annual delegate assembly. So President Andrea Wadsworth Lee from Lee School Committee is was our presenter and oversaw the delegate assembly. So in the interest of time, I've given you the detailed account of the minutes from that delegate assembly, but I'll just go over, or actually, maybe I should offer, do you want me to go over the therefores? Because there's been some changes, there hasn't been some changes.
I think we can all see it. I've never read through them. But do you want to fill us in on anything that you said here? Reflect amended changes of what was finally approved, with the exception of Resolution 2, which I will touch upon.
Okay. Typically we follow the MSBA protocol as we typically do with when we take them up here at the meeting. Anyone who has no discussion or doesn't want to hold, we will approve. We will take it as a approval and then just go on those that people have asked to hold. So Resolution 2, which dealt with increasing the maximum balance for special education reserve funds, passed without comment. Everything else was held. So Resolution 1, regarding sanctuary rights for transgender students, it was amended to include, and I think I've included that in the larger minutes. So it was amended to add a safe environment of protections in the areas of HIPAA laws, discrimination, mental health, and medical care, which includes mental health support and resources for students and their families. So that was added into the language, and it was passed with the amendment. Resolution 3, which is the membership on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, that too was amended slightly in the last sentence to include and inclusive of geographic diversity. So it was passed with that amended language. For Resolution 4, preserving local governance of Massachusetts school, my amendment of, as we discussed, extending it from 3 years to 5 years failed miserably. We had a lot of Holyoke representatives at the delegate assembly that were that spoke out very passionately, and I understand it. I absolutely understand their positions. So the amendment failed, so it passed in its original state of for state takeovers to not last more than 3 years. Resolution 5, personal finance literacy. Resolution 5, personal finance literacy education. That was a lot of discussion, but it was approved as initially written. And then Resolution 6, which dealt with the establishment of a regional school assessment reserve fund. As you recall, we took no action. Again, there was a lot of discussion about it, and it passed unchanged. So that was the, trying to get through it all quickly for you guys. So if you have any questions, please let me know. But that was pretty much just the highlights of those resolutions.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you so much for preparing this for us. We really appreciate it.
Sure, you're
And of
welcome.
course, for all your time there.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Yeah.
Just a comment,
Sure.
to sort of echo what you said, the notes were great, but also an additional thank you for, at least for the 4 years I've been here, serving as the representative and clearly doing the work and representing us well. And
Thank you.
I know
That's
it's
kind
been
of you.
longer than 4 years, but I'm not exactly sure how many, so I won't put you on the spot, but it's
Thank you.
appreciated. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Any other subcommittee reports?
Not that there's a report, but we will be having a school committee handbook subcommittee meeting
Okay.
at 6 p.m. December 7th, right before our regular school meeting, just as a reminder.
Great.
Schedule the next budget subcommittee meeting, but I don't recall the
We
date.
did. You know it? Yeah.
December 1st at 5 p.m.
So that's the next. And then our family engagement subcommittee's meeting tomorrow evening, right? Okay. Is that it? And then I just have a request, I didn't put it in here, but just a request to visit, for the policy subcommittee to revisit our policies on public comment. There's 2, and they don't really work together in a way, so we were trying to go through it and tighten up our public comment, and then I realized that the second policy sort of contradicted a little bit the first, so I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is gonna be tricky to tighten this up if it's, so I just need to, if you could go into that and take a look at those and then bring us some recommendation, that would be great. We need another subcommittee meeting.
I had touched base with David after the last meeting last week, and we reiterated that we need to meet again, so we'll
Great.
schedule something soon.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Could I ask a favor of the policy subcommittee? We, as you know, we have a school committee protocols that we typically sign every year. If you wouldn't mind pulling that into that discussion, because I think that aspect there will be based on the recommendations the policy committee has for the board.
Right, because there's also a protocol on that in our protocol. So we have a couple, and not everything is actually stated in the same way. So as I was trying to prepare, I was like, oh, wait a minute. And I'm like emailing Glenn, I'm like, but it says here this, and it says, so I would just love to have a clean policy so we all know what to do.
You just say we have a protocol on protocols?
No, we have a protocol on public comment. We have a protocol, and in our protocol, there's something on public comment, which I'm not even sure is in line with the other 2 policies.
I heard what you heard.
Did I say protocol?
Yeah.
I heard what you heard.
So the school committee protocols is an agreement of us board members as to how we sort of promise one another to live within a certain set of expectations, and this is what our expectation is, and this is how we will, as board members, meet that for one another and each other and our seats. So, and you'll see it. I don't know if you've ever seen the.
Oh, you've seen it. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
I think you've signed it.
I think I see
I see it.
I got it. I'm like, I hope you saw it. I
think
didn't
Dave
do my
signed it,
job
too.
if you
Pretty
didn't.
sure I saw it. I didn't see the subsection on protocols, but I'll.
Very funny. It's been a long night.
We'll get you the handbook.
Anyway, is there anything else? Any correspondence?
No, none this evening.
Okay, future school committee dates. We have November 19th is our special town meeting here at 9 a.m. Doors open at 7:30. Childcare will be provided. December 7th, we have our regular session meeting, 7 p.m. here in this room, and the 21st as well, and that'll bring us to the end of 2022. And if there's nothing further, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Really? I was like, nobody? Mrs. Plowman, a second by MJ Burns. All in favor?
David?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Good night, everyone.
Good night, thank you.
Good night, David.
Good night, David.